Alright, hey guys, so continuing with our AWS discussion. So we'll look into what we call as, we'll look into a bit of storage in this video, right? So there are two interesting services. One is EBS and the other one is EFS, right? So the first one, which we'll look into, is the EBS. What does EBS stand for? It's Elastic Block Store, right? It's basically nothing but the network drive, right? Think of it as a just like you have your hard disk and SSIDs on your laptop. Similarly, think of EBS Volume as nothing but a network drive, right, which you can attach to your instances while they run, right? Why I'm stressing on the word network drive is because it's going to be somewhere else, right? The volume or the storage is going to be somewhere else, and you're basically going to access it via the network, right? You are not going to have it directly connected to your instance. So that being said, let's play around with it, right? So couple of things here. Always remember, EBS is always locked to your availability zone, right? We have talked about availability zones. Like for example, we are in Mumbai, so our availability zone is AP South 1A, 1B, 1C, right? I have showed you that in the previous videos. Now the problem with or the disadvantage of EBS is that it's locked to your availability zone, right? The place where you create it, it's going to be present there. Now to make imagine, you know, you are in availability zone AP South 1A and you want to move that particular or maybe we'll talk about that later, right? So let's start with something very basic to begin with. So what is the first thing we normally do? Let's go and create an instance. So let's go to EC2 and let's create, because everything starts with the instance, right? Without that we can't do anything. So let's start with the instance. Let's yeah, it's a bit slow today, surprising. Let's turn off the old let's turn off the new EC2 experience. Not a big fan of that. So let's go and launch a new instance and we'll go with our L2 Linux 2 AMI, right? T2 micro, and this all remains same, right? Nothing new here. Now this is the place which we gotta concentrate. Till now we were just clicking on next here, but let's just look at it a bit, right? So you see by default there is a root volume, right, where your operating system and all of that is going to stay, and that device is XVDA, right? And you see here by default it will use the GB2. So there are different, think of the volume type is nothing but different types of EBS volumes, right? So what we'll do now is let's add a new volume, right? This is nothing but me adding a new volume so that our instance will be able to use it, right? For probably creating files, storing files and whatnot. Now what we'll do is, so I'm basically going to call it as EBS. Let it be there. You can see the device. You have options of selecting different devices. I'm going to stick to SDB, the default one. And here, this is the place where I was talking about the volume types, right? This volume types are nothing but different types of EBS volumes. So you have GP2, which is general purpose, and you have IO1, which is like for high performance, you know, SSD volume for like mission critical stuff, right? Very low latency. And IO2 is also basically an advanced version of that. And you have SC1, ST1. ST1 and SC1 are kind of like low cost HDD, right? They are not SSD, they are HDD volumes. They are basically designed if you are not doing frequent IO operations, right? Then you can probably use these both guys. So that way, you know, you have multiple options here. You can select whichever you want based on your need. I'm going to stick to my GP2 general purpose, you know, because it gives a good balance between the price and performance, right? So depending on your budget and what is your needs, you can use different types of volume types. That being said, you know, I can stick to 8 GB, probably I can reduce this to 2 GB as well. Why do I want 8 GB, right? So I'm going to reduce it to 2 GB. I'm going to say next add tags, and probably I can add a tag here. I'm going to say this is going to be our name, right? And the name tag for our instance, and we are going to call this EBS demo, right? There you go. So we're going to say configure the security group. Now the security group, I can probably use something which has already been there before. So I can say select an existing security group, right? So probably my first sec, I could use this. I'm not going to do much with security groups here, so I'm going to use what we already have. not going to create something new. So that's fine. Then what do we do next? So let's do review and launch. And let's use that EC2 bits please, which is my key pair, and we're going to launch the instance, right? So let's view the instances, and this time you see here on the right and bottom corner, you can see you have a root device, and along with that you also have a network drive or the EBS volume which got attached, which is your dev STB, right? So give me a second. All right, so we've got the machine running, which looks good. So what I'm going to do now is quickly switch to my my shell here, so that I can just grab this guy. Okay, so what we'll do here is, let's go down to my downloads where I have my key, right? So I'm going to do SSH and provide the key, right, the EC2 key, and what's the IP address? We'll have to grab the IP address, right, of the machine. So let's grab that. So I believe it's somewhere here. Yeah, there you go. Let's copy this guy and let's go here, and we'll have to put in the EC2 username, right, which is EC2-user at, we'll have to put in the IP address. There you go. So we have logged in to the machine, which looks good. Yeah, so what we'll do now is, let's see, so we have set up the machine, we have attached the drive, right? Now what I'll do is I'll kind of like go down to this document, which is kind of like a user guide, which tells me how to attach the volume which I created to my machine, right? So what I've done right now is I have just created an instance, right? And I have also created I mean, obviously the machine comes with the root device, but I've also created a EBS volume here. But that's not the end of the day. I mean, you have just done your creation part. Now you need to really create a file system and then create a volume and then attach it to your machine, right? So there's a little bit of work remaining. So let's go and do that part of the work, right? So good. So what we'll do is, let me see if I can just do this. Probably not. Interesting. Hoping to divide my screen. Yeah, I think that looks good, right? I think this is better. So let me close this. Yeah, awesome. So what we'll do now is, let's follow this guide, right? It basically tells us making a Amazon EBS volume available to use, for use in Linux. You will have something similar for Windows as well. Since we are doing everything in Linux, let's follow this guide. So let's run this command, which basically shows us the various volumes on our device, right? So you can see here, XVDA, this is our root. XVDA1 in fact is the this is the disk, and this is the file partition or the file system which was created for this. Similarly, you can see the EBS volume here, but you don't see anything attached to it, right? Which means it clearly is nothing but as of now it's just a EBS attachment. There is no volume, there is no file systems, right? You can just see it as a volume, right? There is no file system, nothing. So let's check that by running this command. So we basically need to run this command to check. Let's do /dev, and what is our volume name? It's this. So I'm going to paste this here, and you can see you returned something called as data, right? But let's do the same thing for our root volume. So if you're doing same thing for the root volume, it's going to be XVDA1, right? XVDA1, and there you go. See, if it has a file system and if it is properly set up, then you should actually see something like this, right? It should show the file system and stuff. But you see, for the EBS volume, you don't see any of that. The reason is because of because we have not really done anything on that volume yet, right? So let's go about and do it then. I mean, right? So because we really want to create this system volume, a file system here, so that we can store files in it, right? So let's go and do it. So how do we do it? We'll have to create a MKFS, right? Make file system. So let's run this. Obviously, we'll have to run this on our dev xvdb, right? So there you go. It created XFS, in fact, right? You can try different file systems. You can use, I believe, there's something called ext4, right? That's a famous file system as well. We are using XFS for now. Now, once you create the file system, the next step is basically let's go and create a folder, right? We're going to create a data folder which will make directory, and it's going to be /data. Now we are going to do what? We are going to mount this file system which we just now created, right? So we'll mount that volume which already has the file system now into where? Into the folder which we just now created. So it's going to be dev xvdb, and what is the data folder? It is /data. There you go. So we have mounted, right? So you can see the various steps involved here. Just to review, we first created a file system, right? We created a file system over here. The file system is a XFS file system, right, in the volume. And once we did the file system, then we kind of mounted the volume to a folder which is a data folder. So let me I've just cleaned the screen, and what we'll do now is let's get into that folder which we just now created, right? So this is the data folder, right? So we can like create a file here, right? I can say sudo touch hello.txt, right? See, look, I can create a file, and once I create the file, I can do ls to see that file. I can probably go into the file and kind of what is the file? I can just say hello or something like that, right? So you can write to the file, right? So you can see cat hello, there you go. So you can write to the file, so you can do all operations on the file, right? Which means looks like our EBS volume is working, right? Because we are able to create a file, save our files, edit our files, and all of that, right? Cool. The next step, next is what we're going to look into is the second step here, how to automatically mount an attached volume, right, after reboot, right? Right now, whatever we did, it's going to go away if we reboot the machine. So we want to make this persistent, right? So for that, what we'll do is we'll have to first copy the existing, let's say some kind of settings which are there in this fstab file into a dummy file, right? Just for saving the current configuration. So there you go. We have saved the current stuff because we don't want to break anything. Then we need what we call as one specific UUID, right? So we're going to run this and fetch that UUID for us, right? So in our case, if you see for xvdb, this is the UUID, right? So I'm going to just copy this whole thing. Let me just copy it in my clipboard. And what I'll do now is the next step is important, right? So we got to go to sudo, and let's probably use nano, and let's go to this folder. Let's go to this file, and let's add this particular line at the bottom. So we're going to say UUID, probably I'll have to remove that quotes. So there we go, I'm removing the quote and the rest of the stuff. So why are we doing this again? We are doing this because we want our volume to be persistent, right? So we need to add this UUID to that particular file, and obviously along with that we'll have to add this extra piece of config as well. So let's go, and this is all Linux stuff, right? I don't want to spend time on why we do this as such, but it is needed. So we'll have to put in the number 2 as well along with it, right? Okay, so Control X, yeah, there you go. So we've added the stuff which we needed. Right now, what we'll do is to test if everything is working, let's do a unmount of the existing volume. So let's unmount it, right? Okay, so let's probably come back outside and unmount it here. There you go. So we have unmounted it. Now, if you simply run ls blk, right, you can see the volume is no longer there. It has been unmounted, right? Now let's see if we can mount it back. So if this command works, this next command is basically for mounting it back. So it will basically go to this etc fstab file which we just now edited, and it will fetch all the volumes from there and it will mount it. So if this works, it means that it will also work when we reboot it, right? So let's see, there you go. So this command ran successfully, which means now if I do ls blk, you can see the volume is back. So it has been mounted, right? So we kind of clearly showed here a quick method, right, to attach to first provision your EBS volume, then kind of format it into the file system you want, and then mount it, mount that volume onto your instance. We also showed how to make it persistent, right, in case of a reboot. Now this is going to work, right? So let's go back to my screen here, right, and yeah, so this is what we did. So let's go back to our instance here. The next thing which probably we'll look into is we'll not get into all the details of different types of volume types, because that's, you'll find it in the documentation, like I said. And we'll quickly look into snapshots. How do you snapshot a volume, right? That's something which most of us would need when we are playing with AWS, right? So right now you can see this is my volume here. Let's go to the volumes. Where is my volumes here? So this is my volume. In fact, the 2 GB is actually my my extra volume which we added, right? The 8 GB is basically obviously the root volume, right? So we are gonna obviously select the 2 GB volume which we added, as a network drive, and we can just right click on this and we can say create snapshot, and this screen opens up. So here you can write anything. You can say backup of my EBS, whatever we are trying here, right? It's EBS volume, right? You can give in any comment of this sort and you can say create snapshot, close. And once you're done with that, let's go to snapshots here, and we should see the snapshot being created, right? So let's refresh it. It's taking some time. It'll take some time, obviously, because it has to create a snapshot of the 2 GB, right? Though there's nothing, but still it has to create it. So it'll take some time for the snapshot to be created, but that's as simple as that. There's also another interesting option here called Lifecycle Manager. I really like this because let's go and create snapshot lifecycle policy. So what you can do here is you have options to kind of, like, for example, let's put the tag, right? The tag of our instances is EBS demo. So I can basically tell all the instances, right? All the EBS volumes, right, which has this particular tag, right? We can basically create a policy to do a snapshot of those volumes, in a periodic way. So I can say go and do the snapshot, or snapshot all the volumes daily, right? Every 12 hours at this particular time, right? And you can create such kind of policies. And this is really useful again in production, right? When you want to, there's some critical, resource, critical volume, and you really want to kind of snapshot it so that you don't lose it, right? So you don't have to wake up in the middle of the night to do a snapshot. You can just create a policy here, and the policy will take care of it, right? So we will not obviously do that. So let me just cancel that. But that's a quick way to do it. Now you see our snapshot is created and everything looks good. Next, let's talk a little bit about migration, because that will be a good question, right? Migration. Why I talk about migration is, imagine you created a volume in a particular AZ, right, in a particular availability zone, but now you want to migrate it to a different availability zone. How would you do it, right? Pretty simple. So obviously, first thing is you have the volume. In our case, this is the volume. Second step is you would create a snapshot of it. We have already created. So this is the snapshot. And once you have the snapshot, what I would do next is you'll basically create a volume out of the snapshot, right? So in simple steps, we have taken our volume, we have backed it up into a snapshot, and we are creating a volume out of it. Now, when you're creating a volume out of it, here, we have options, right? Here you can, I'm not sure where is my current volume. So let's go back and check that before we create this. So our current volume is in AP South 1A. So what I'm going to do is, let's go here, create volume. And this time when I'm creating the volume, I'm going to create it in a different AZ, which is 1B, right? As simple as that. It's so quick, right? So you can now select here, and if you want to encrypt, you can encrypt. Otherwise, you can say create volume, close, and within few seconds, if you go down here, you should see the second volume getting created, right? And this volume will be created in your AP South 1B, the other AZ, right? As simple as that. Remember, you have your existing volume, snapshot it, and then create a volume out of the snapshot into any AZ you want, right? That's because you have a restriction that a particular volume can only be used in one particular AZ. You can't use it in multiple AZs or availability zones. The other interesting thing is encrypting the volume. Now, if you pick any of our volume, right now, any of these volumes are probably, let me just uncheck this. The first volume which we had created, if you see here at the bottom, it is not encrypted, right? And you might have a use case where you would want to really encrypt the volume, right? So in such a case, you will have to again, follow the approach where, by creating the snapshot, right? So what is the approach? So you basically go down to the snapshot, right? We have the snapshot here, right? And what we'll do is, this time we'll say copy. So we have our volume, a non-encrypted volume. even our snapshot will be not encrypted. So I'm gonna just copy the snapshot, right? And here it gives me an option to encrypt the snapshot. So I'm gonna click on that. I'm gonna say copy, right? Close. So now a new snapshot will get created, right? So let's wait for that. So, but then once that snapshot is created, that particular snapshot is going to be encrypted, right? So we'll have to wait for that to finish. I'll just pause the video until that is done. Probably might take some time, right? There you see, we have created the second snapshot here, which is encrypted now, right? Now it is the same process. Now you can create any number of volumes from here. I can go and say create volume, right, in whichever AZ you want, right? We can keep it the default as well. You can see the by default, because this is an encrypted snapshot, you can just create an encrypted volume out of it. And you click on create, close. Let's go to the volumes here, back again. That is volumes. Here you go. And the final volume which is getting created right now, I think probably this is the topmost one. You can see here, it is encrypted now, right? So snapshot kind of plays the middleman. You want to do encryption, you want to kind of migrate your existing volume to a different AZ, all of that, you have to first snapshot it, and then you get, you know, multiple options to do it. There's one more thing I want to show here before we go to the next step, which is let me show you by creating an instance. Select, right? This time I'll not select the T2 micro, I'll select something big, right? Let me select something like maybe like C5D large, probably a big one. I'm not going to go and create it. I just want to show you this. Let's say next, add storage. There you go. So you see here for this particular, there are some instances, right, where, you know, the root EBS volumes, some instances do not come with root EBS volumes. I mean, in this case, it does comes with that, but there is another type of volume which is called as instance store, and this is an example for that, right? So you still have your EBS volume here. I can see the root is still there, the GP2, but along with that, you see there is something default which has been created for you, a 50 GB SSD ephemeral 2, ephemeral 0, in fact, which is nothing but your instance store, right? This is like your you know, volume which is directly attached to your machine, and that's the difference between this and EBS. EBS is a network drive. This one is physically attached to your device. So obviously the IO operations, the speed, and the you know, buffer, cache, and all of that would be like very, very high with this. Now I'm not going to create this because if I do that, I'm going to be charged. So let me skip that part. So that was the other piece which I wanted to talk to you about, the instance store, right? If you have a use case for that, go ahead and do that. Now the last thing which I want to show you is the Elastic File System. So that's a very interesting service as well, right? It's very similar to your EBS, but the difference is that one of the main differences is that EFS, you can create one EFS and then you can use it on multiple instances, right? And also you can create one EFS and you can kind of use it with multiple instances and in multiple AZ as well. So you can share it in multiple AZ or availability zone, right? So you have a bit of more flexibility with Elastic File System. So that's one of the, if that's a use case like your content management, WordPress and all of that, then you can use, you know, EFS. All right, so let's quickly check this out. So what we'll do is let's go to services. Let's do EFS. There you go. And on EFS, let's go and say create file. So instead of directly creating, I'm gonna customize. I'm gonna click on customize because there are a bunch of options which you can check out here. All right, so by default 30 days since last access, right? So it will backup also. So it will automatically back up all the you know, content which is there on the file system, right? You have option to select 7 days backup, 14 days and stuff. I'm gonna keep 30 days by default. Again, here also you have, depending on your performance, right, you can select different types. You can read the documentation. I'm gonna keep it general purpose, bursting, provisioned, and all of that, right? So all of this is related to your throughput and performance and stuff. Not very much needed for a network engineer per se, but maybe if you're developing applications, then you might want to check that out. But otherwise, yeah, looks good. So let me just click on next. Now here, what you can do is, yeah, so basically here, this is your VPC, right? Virtual Private Cloud, the network which will be assigned. Now think of EFS also as another instance, right? And whenever you have an instance, you always have a security group. So you can create a security group here. So in fact, let me do that. So let me go down here. Let me go to EC2 on a different window. Quickly go down to security groups, and let's create a new security group, and we'll call this what? Let's call this my EFS demo, probably, right? So I'm going to say my EFS demo. That's going to be the security group name. And do I want, I'm probably not going to put any rule for now. I'll put that later. So I'm going to just create this. You want a description, put the same thing. There you go. So I'm going to create it. Now come back here. Probably I'll have to refresh this, otherwise it's not going to be reflected. Okay. So here, now I will be able to select, right? So let me delete this default ones. And here, see, I see my EFS demo. So I've created a new security group, and I'm going to attach that to my EFS storage, right? So there you go. So I've attached the same security group to all the 3 availability zones, right? So that's good. So let's go and click on next, and create. Right, there you go. So we created our first EFS volume, right? So it is Elastic file system. And now this will take some time for creating, I believe. But you can see here, I think it's still creating. So we'll have to wait for some time for it to get created. But meantime, what we'll do is let's quickly jump onto my EC2 instances, and let's create 2 instances here. So I'm going to say launch instance and select. This is going to be the normal T2 micro. Right, and the first one, we are going to keep it in the default. We'll retain it wherever it's going to create. I'm happy with wherever it's going to create. That's fine. This is also good, right? I don't want any SSD, or I don't want any storage here. So I'm going to say add tags. Probably I'll add a tag. I'm going to call this guy, I'm going to say this one as for EFS1, right? Just because it's not EFS, it's a EFS, it's an instance. But just to, or maybe let's say something else, right? I think this is confusing. So I'm going to say instance 1 and add a security group, and we'll create a new security group here, and we'll say this is the security group, because this is the instance, right? And we have to connect this instance to where? I have to connect it to my EFS, because I want this instance to use the EFS, the file system service. I'm going to create a security group for that. Keep everything default, only SSH, review, launch. And keep this default as well, launch instances. Now that is done. Let's view instances. And while that is creating, well, let me quickly go and create one more. Launch more instance like this. But this time I'm going to edit the instance details, and I'm going to wait. I forgot where it created the previous one. So let's see, my bad. Okay, I'll have to probably do this again. So let's go back to EC2. And go back to my instances. So this one, the default one was created in South 1A. So I want to create the other one in a different zone, right? So I'll create in probably 1B. So wait, so let's go and edit. And here, let me edit this to 1B probably, right? And the rest, everything looks good. So I'll review and launch, right? Launch, and there you go, launch, yeah. So now we have created 2 cool instances, right? One in South 1A and one in South 1B. Okay. So once these guys come up, so let's refresh it. Meanwhile, the first one has come up, so I can connect to it, right? So let's go here, and yeah, so let's split this window, right? Okay. So let's clear the screen a bit. I have my SSH. Okay, so anyway, so it's gonna be SSH-I and EC2, I guess. Tab it. Sorry, I do something. I think I'll have to go to downloads. Give me a minute. Okay, where am I right now? I'm in. Sorry. Okay, I'm already inside. That's interesting. Okay, that's because that's going for the old machine. My bad. Okay, so let's do this again. So SSH, I and the EC2, right, and EC2-user, and let's connect it to the new machine, the 2 machines which we have created. The first instance is here, so let's copy this guy, let's paste it here, and this is good. So let's click on yes. Okay, that got connected. Similarly, the second machine, we'll have to pick the IP address of that guy, which is here, and I think this guy over here, and let's paste that guy as well. There's an interesting error. What's the error? C2 looks good. Okay, probably this is not in the downloads folder. Let's go to the downloads folder, because the PEM file is over there, right? So I think now it should work. Yeah, there you go. So we've got both the machines here, right? Both the machines, and what we are trying to do now is we are trying to attach this cool EFS which we have created to that guy. So what we will do is, it's pretty simple. You just go and click on attach and keep everything default here, right? We're not going to do anything here. But before this, we have to install a utility. So what you'll have to do is go down to the user guide, and on the user guide you scroll down and it will basically tell you how to install this utility package. Go to this one, and here, there you go. So this one, you'll have to install this. So let's go back and install this guy on both the machines here as well, right? So that's it. So we've installed the utility. Now we are good to what? Good to play around with this, right? So first we'll do is we have to create a folder. So let's go to a folder. We'll create a folder called mkdir, and we'll create it as EFS, right? Similar, let's do it on the other side as well. Just to refresh, what we are trying to do, we are trying to attach the EFS to these two machines, right? Right now it is not there. We are trying to attach it. So we've created that, and now I think it's time to go and just grab this command from here. This is how you mount the EFS machine. EFS file system to both your instances. So there you go. And I know why this is timing out, because of security issues, right? So what has happened is our instances, right? We have to change the security group, or we have to modify the security group which we have added to our instances. So what we'll do is we'll go to the security group, because our security group on our instances is not allowing the EC2. It's not allowing the EFS to be attached, right? So we have to go and modify it. So what did we just now create? We basically have to go to this particular my EFS demo, right? This particular security group is attached to EFS. So in the inbound, you see there is no rule. So we'll edit this, and here in the inbound we will provide. We'll have to provide the NFS service here, right? So because we want our EFS to talk to EC2 via the NFS service, right, or via NFS protocol. So let's keep all of this default, and here we'll have to select that select this EC2 to EFS security group, right, because we want only that guy to be able to have access to it. This is pretty much straightforward security groups stuff, right, which we have talked about earlier as well. So now that we have put that, I think this should work. Okay, looks like it worked. I can just copy this and go jump onto the other guy and put it there as well. Looks good, right? So let's clear the screen a bit. Okay, so all of that is good. Now what we'll do is, are we done? We have not done yet. We will have to, so we can quickly go down to my EFS folder, and we can see, we can create a file, touch hello.txt. Sorry, touch, I think I'll have to put, I think that should work actually. Touch hello.txt. There is permission issue. So probably I'll have to do it via sudo. Let's try that. Okay, that file got created. Now I'll show you the magic. I'll go to the second instance and I'll go to the folder EFS. Let's do ls. There you go. See, we have the file. The file which was created, is available on the other side as well, right? So that's mainly what we have achieved in this. So we basically created a EFS service, and we actually created a EFS volume, and we attached it to both of my instances, and we also checked out that we verified it because we created the file on one of the instance, right, and we were able to see that particular file on the other instance, which means now our EFS is actually attached to both the instances, right? So hope that was useful. I just covered EBS and EFS in this particular video, hope that was useful, guys. So thanks a lot for watching. Have a good day. Bye.